Good morning,
Good
or
morning.
afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. Pacific time, US, this is midnight. I think it's afternoon or in early evening in Australia, and it's morning here in Europe. So wonderful to see you. Okay, we invite you once again to bring yourself here, in this moment. People are still coming in, and as people are joining us, to take a moment to appreciate this space that we're in together.
And again, this is an invitation to go beyond the hypnotization of the computer, to be aware, yes, we are using the computer here. Yes, this is the computer I'm so familiar with, my computer. I spend probably a lot of time with, usually with stuff like email or Facebook or whatever. But this time, although I am with my computer, this is not really time with my computer. This is a time with other people. And looking at my screen, I can see that I not only can look at my screen, I also can look through my screen and see you. It's great to see you.
Mm. And it's great to again appreciate the amazing fact that we are here together, and we are sitting very far apart. That we are in some ways mysteriously deeply present to each other at this moment here all together, and we are sitting in very different places.
So just let's take a moment or so to really arrive in this space, because as we said yesterday, one of the difference between online meeting and on-site meetings are that to arrive here, this is an only inner movement, because it's physically we are at the same space that we have been 5 minutes ago. And it was a private space. I was probably on my own. I was probably not with anyone. I just clicked a couple of clicks on the computer, and all of a sudden the place changed. My physical location has not changed, so I have to go through this inner movements to leave my privacy a little bit behind, to acknowledge with my soul that I'm with others, to see each other, to welcome each other, and to open myself to each other. And it's good to take time for that inward time, because there is the temptation to switch on the computer, to go to a meeting, but inwardly have not changed the inner position, basically still be on my own and have an objectified relationship to what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. I'm not allowing myself to get into relationship. So I invite you to come and see, be aware, join the space inwardly. Maybe you want to go back and forth. We are on 3 screens, so just to not only see the people on one screen, you also can go to screen number 2 and 3, see each other, and I'm very happy to see you. Mm-hmm.
And you notice that we're speaking slowly because we're inviting you to slow down and not just be in a mode of habit. We want you to be in a mode of awareness, an awareness of the subtle dimension of our being together. And for that, we need to slow down a bit. And be present. And to give presence in this space. And I think that that's an important important distinction, because often we in many ways take in we take in what's going on. We take in and contemplate and work through what's going on. And here we're asking you to give yourself, your essence, to be here in an open space, in an open way, opening to each other here. It's that opening that helps create the presence of this space, which we are co-creating right now.
And as we said yesterday, and as we will continue to say, one of the particularities of online meeting is that this space is not held by physicality, by a certain room that we are sitting in, a certain table we are sitting at, a certain circle that we are sitting in a certain house, in a certain place. This space that we are holding, and that you also will be holding when you are holding whatever you are planning to do online, this space is held through consciousness. And the way we hold consciousness is by consciously using language to invoke this space, to allow to be aware of this space. A big part of what we did yesterday was, from our point of view, just a pointing out practice, an ongoing pointing out practice. Let's be aware that there is a shared space. Let's be aware that there is a shared space. Because what we try to create is an inner reference point of the shared space, so that this we space that we are in is not just a mental idea. Okay, yes, we are in an online meeting. Yes, this is, but that there's a heartfelt relationship to where we are in right now, because only when this reference space is alive, we as facilitators can work with this reference space. Having this inner reference is the strongest tool to work with others in this space.
And this today, the topic is sculpting atmospheres, because yesterday in creating this reference, we were creating the reference within your experience, trying to give you a sense of what it is like to be in a space that is alive together. The reference point that Thomas is speaking to is what it is in your own experience that gives you an opening to this interbeing, this intersubjective aliveness, wholeness experience. Today we're talking about sculpting atmospheres, which means what qualities of the collective space are important for you to do the work that you need to do. How do you create, how do you develop an ability to sense into the wholeness of the space so that you can work with that wholeness? Now, many of you are going to be doing different things with online. You're going to be doing maybe a co-creative social entrepreneur project that you're working with that is high level or highly dynamic and charged. Some of you may be doing grief counseling. What each of those different contexts calls for a different atmosphere, a different way of being together. But for that to work at a level of deep connection, one needs to be engaging with the space as a whole, as the facilitator. And when I say space as a whole, I don't mean it's something out there as a whole. I mean including oneself. So one becomes a deep sensing instrument for the whole of the space that one is creating. And it's important to realize that it's not simply one's own experience. It is a field of awareness, of consciousness that you are being the resonant tuning for. And that is an important awareness to bring into the space that you're working with online.
So when you will work with the space, or whatever the space will be, in a therapeutic session, in a business session, as a counselor, or in a spiritual context. There's a certain we space that you start with. There's a certain we space that you will work with. And it's important for yourself to be aware of this we space, and to help your clients, the people you work with, to participate in this we space. When we talk about we space, we talk about 3 levels of the we space that maybe be helpful to understand and see and acknowledge. First is that we all are always in a we space if we are aware of it or not. If you come online here on a computer, if you're aware of it or not, this is a we space. When you have a session with clients, if people are aware of it or not, this is a we space. When you're in a church, I hope you're aware of it, this is a we space. When you're in a business setting, I hope people are aware of it, this is a we space. This is a we space, even if people are in denial of the fact that it's a we space. It's always a we
just unaware.
Yeah, it's just always a we space. So this is just to acknowledge that it is impossible to step out of we spaces. We only can be unaware of we spaces. But, and this is exactly what we're working with and what we are inviting you to work with, a we space changes quality dramatically when it becomes self-aware, that we are collectively aware of the we space that we are in. To be aware that this is a space of relationship changes this space in a very profound way. And I would like to make a connection to our individuality, our individual being as a human being, because we are human beings on several levels. First, we are a human being because we are a human being, we are an individual. If we are aware of it or if we are not aware of it. But part of our individuation process that we went through as a species through thousands of years, and that every one of us goes through in our biography, is that we become self-aware. I am. And this changes my individuality dramatically, or one even could say one awakes to one's individuality when I am aware, wait a moment, I am. There's something in the process as a species, as an individual, to become self-aware that changes the relationship to myself. I am. Responsibility comes from the point that I realize I am. And in a similar way, in a we space, when we become aware of we are together in this we space, we are together in this we space, the quality of the we space changes dramatically. So part of what we are working with is to allow us to be aware that this is a we space, because this is a different starting point, particular as a facilitator. And then there's a third level of we space that again allows to work in a very different way, because we can be aware, yes, this is a we space, but basically what I really care about is how I look like, how smart I am, what I think I have to give. That's all okay, it's part of it. But if we become aware of the we space and start to care for this we space, and start to care for this we space in a shared way, in a collective way, the quality of the we space has a very different potential to flower, because we care for it, we are aware of it, and we care for it. And the space that we try to create is a space where we collectively are aware of the space that we're in, and that we collectively care for the space that we are in. That's what we mean with sculpturing the atmosphere.
And actually, it's quite interesting because when caring about the space is different from caring about the individuals in the space. I mean, one, of course, in the work that's one is doing closely with other human beings, one cares about the people that you're counseling, that you're consulting with, that you're working with, that you're doing dialogue with. But caring for the space is caring for something at a more subtle level that is pulled out of each of us when we begin to be aware and become conscious of the space that we're in together and its potential. It's very much about an experience of something possible, uh, that is not quite definable, that one experiences together. That is what we give our hearts to. We care for, and it's in holding that love for the space, that care for the space, and within that the care for the individuals, that allows us to do deeper, more powerful, engaged work together in online, but also in person, but certainly online.
And again, as the topic of the day is to create coherence. The reason why we are making this distinction that we call the difference between an interpersonal space and an intersubjective space, that you also can call interbeing, is because when we are aware that we are not kind of one-to-one to one-to-one to one-to-one relationships, but we are in a whole, we as facilitators, but also with everyone, develop the capacity to care for the whole and care for the coherence, to not fragment. So the reason why it is important to be not only aware of the single one relationships, but also about the wholeness of the relationship, is that this allows us to develop and structure the coherence.
And coherence is a shared resonance, and the coherence of the field, or the coherence of the group that one is working with, is a first step toward working at a different level together, and a first step in terms of inviting the people that you're working with to work at a deeper level and to make a deeper connection through online work. So, for example, Thomas and I are calling us into coherence every day when we invite you to look at each other, to slow down and be here. We're inviting you to meet energetically at a different level. We're inviting you through language. We're inviting you by using language to invoke the wholeness that we're in together. And in doing that, we are creating an atmosphere where where we experience ourselves as in connection. And that's the first step in creating the kind of online relationship that allows you to do the deep work that you do.
So we would like to invite you again to come together in small groups. And we would like you to talk about this difference that we try to explain from our perspective. The difference where we focus only on the interpersonal, on the one-to-one to one-to-one relationship that is important in any kind of counseling, versus to also be aware of the wholeness of the way space, which we call intersubjective relationship or interbeing. And just to be aware, what is the difference if I'm only focusing on the I, you you relationship. This is important ingredients of holding any kind of V-space. To holding this and also holding together an awareness of the wholeness of the space, the wholeness of the atmosphere that we are together in and that we are holding together.
So that I, you is an interpersonal relationship. And holding the interpersonal within the context of interbeing. Explore that difference. And pay attention to your own voice. How can you use, when you're speaking about it, how can you use language to invoke the interbeing together? Okay, so we will send you the little square that will invite you into a group, and take a few moments to come together and be together, and then start speaking about your perception of this difference. It's the difference between this interpersonal I, you space and the intersubjective interbeing. And it's not that they're opposites, it's that the intersubjective interbeing adds a dimension to what it is that you're paying attention to. So it's a stretch of consciousness. And we'll be in groups for 20 minutes. 20 minutes seems good. Yeah, for 20 minutes. And we'll let you know when you're halfway. Okay? And also, just for those who are thinking, maybe I have time to just take a short break or call right now, this is where the action is in this program. So this is where you really learn how to do this, or how to work with this.
So
these groups.
From our perspective, this is just the introduction to the real work that you are doing together now between you guys. This is just our explanation, how we see, how we can look at the difference together, because this is not something we can do in a theoretical way. This is an experiential way that only can be done when we see it from the inside out and not just from the outside in. So we really encourage you to be part of the small groups.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back. Good to see smiling faces.
Okay. So just again, first of all, the schedule we will now engage in sharing as a way of our sensing where you are, so that we can respond to you from where your understanding is residing. And then at 11, or let's see, in 10:30, in 45 minutes, because the time is different in different places. In 45 minutes, we'll take a break for a half an hour again. So that will be the rhythm for the rest of the program. Basically, we will meet for the first hour and a half, take a break for a half an hour, and come back for an hour. So just so everyone knows. And so we have a hand up already. Please, raise your hands if you would like to speak, since we can't see all of you here. And we'd like to hear your perception of the difference between focusing on the interpersonal, the I, you, and the interpersonal within the context of interbeing or the intersubjective. Okay, Dita, do you want to begin?
Thank you. It was a very interesting exercise, a very beautiful experience as well to be with the group I was, and none the wiser. I still don't seem to feel or understand, which might be an important difference, how to be. So either I'm really not getting the interbeing at all, or I don't know how to be in a one-to-one interaction within a group. So my sense, but again, this might be just me thinking that I can sense interbeing, is that I cannot go from I to one-to-one to interbeing, but just me and then the group as something larger than the individuals.
Mm.
And it's really unsettling to suddenly feel that, oh, does that mean that I'm not caring about the individual people? Or how it's been a very shaking exercise. And wondering. And I think there was Julia, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, she pointed out that difference, that when I was saying that there was a difference between the understanding of the difference between interbeing and interpersonal and the feeling of it. And maybe that is what I'm trying to achieve, and it's maybe not necessary. So thank you.
No, thank you, Dieter. And this is an important question. And maybe to explain it in a very simple way, as you are asking the question right now, we are talking, particularly you, Elizabeth, and I. And you're posing the question to us, and so we're having this conversation about this question. So that there's a relationship between you, myself, and Elizabeth in pursuing this question. At the same time, it's not just the three of us talking right now. We are in a context of 85 people pursuing this question. The difference between one and one is to just focus on, oh, I'm talking with Dieter, and this is important because I have to care about your question. At the same time, being aware that we are in a situation where it's not just the three of us, but it's the 85 of us, and to have this simultaneously in my awareness that both is true at the same time. And the way we talk also about the question is shaped by my trying to respond to you and my being aware that I'm not only talking to you, but I'm also at the same time talking to the whole of us of 85. And this is easy to miss, because if I talk to you right now, I could very easily forget about that there are other 85 people and just focus on the question. This is fair. Or I just could talk to the 85 and forget about you. And to have the sensitivity and the care to talk you, Dieter, and at the same time have the sensitivity and care that we are in a whole that also needs to be cared for at the same time, is the thing that we are asking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that actually is instructive for you to understand what we're doing right now, and for you to do as facilitators in an online space. particularly because it is our consciousness that holds this, that we are working not to just speak to you, Dita, because we want to hold the whole that is here.
And the reason why we make this an important point is because as a facilitator, this is the way how you can best care that the space of all of us does not fragment. That I use all my capacities that I have to care for the not fragmentation of this space. And then there are a lot of questions how to do that. But in order to engage with the question how to do that, I have to engage with the question that this is an important thing as a facilitator, that the space as a whole holds its integrity, and that we find the way how we have conversations that I, talking to you, don't forget about anyone else at the same time, and the whole. And to do this allows us and helps us to be facilitator for the whole space, because the dynamic really is so of a different quality when there is a sense of integration and a sense of coherence versus a sense of fragmentation in the space. So this is one of the basic things to care for. The space, as far as possible, does not fragment.
And I would say particularly online, because it's so easy to objectify everybody else in the squares, all the other little squares, and then just focus on one person. So it's a stretching exercise for all of us to hold both. Thank you, Dita.
Thank you so much.
Pam?
Hey, Elizabeth. Hello, Thomas.
Hi.
I always love what you guys are sharing, and last night what you shared was, I just love how it's overlapping and it's like riding a deeper, bigger wave each session. So I wanted to share that the interpersonal space, so the interbeing space is an embrace of the interpersonal space. They are, I don't know, they're like a huge, it's like a huge bubble, right? It's a huge container of the light and love and essence and everything that each one of us is inside us, that we can fall into, that we can remember. And when we tip into this we space, it is through the doorway, the gateway of the heart. It was interesting in the group when we had the breakout session where we were all in our I space, like we were sharing like our frustrations. There was a lot of feeling like we were in a hit space. And then there was a call to do a heart meditation to tip a little bit into the we space, where the melding of the individual personas and the ideas of what we want to get out of something into a relaxing and surrendering of everything. And what I wanted to share as well is that for me, I experienced the interpersonal space more before I facilitate a group or personal session. But what I find is really helpful and is to actually do a heart meditation with everyone on the call. And this also works in in-person sessions. And in that opening of our hearts to each other, that's when the we space just flows. Because from here is how we expand into ourselves and therefore each other. And suddenly the we space opens up, as you mentioned, Elizabeth, this infinite possibilities, because we are all multidimensional beings. And this session is so profound because suddenly there isn't an I that's attached to stories. There isn't an I that's attached to an ideation of a particular process. Suddenly, like Thomas mentioned last night about the whole music jam, it is like a music jam. It's like the whole universe is jamming with you in a deep session. because everything is information and everything can be transmitted and shared with each other in a we space. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Pam. And I want to say, doing meditation together at the beginning, or depending on whether that's appropriate for the context that you're creating, can be a way of creating a level of coherence. So that can be very helpful in opening the space to this depth of subtle connection. So thank you very much. Hardo, you're muted? Yeah.
Yes. Yes, what I experienced at the breakout group is that, yes, at first the interpersonal space in a way from one to one. I tried to go through the screen and to connect, and when everybody said something, I could feel it a little bit more. And then Natalia shared how she stepped from the me to you space to the we space. And at that point, when she spoke about that, I could feel that I opened and could immediately go with her in a way in the we space. And it was like a doorway for me. Mm-hmm. And then it was much more easy. And I felt not a little bit, I felt much more energy. And I could hold without problem the we space in a way. And also the me to you was in that without problem in a way.
Yeah.
And so what I learned about that I don't have to make it all alone. So to create how I get a we space. So there's one person said something or shared her experience, and I could switch in, and it's like a catalyst with many persons. No. So thank you.
Thank you, Arda, very much, because what you are describing is one of the main ways how one can do this as a facilitator. What the partner seems to have done is that she, because she was relating with you also in an IU relationship, but was holding also her relationship with the whole, that she helped through the relationship with you to also open up the relationship to the whole of the interbeing space at the same time. So what you can do as a facilitator is just in your own relationship with everyone, and with your own relationship and with your own heart relationship to the space as a whole, you become a catalyst for the transition from an interpersonal relationship to an intersubjective relationship where both can be held for all of us, just because you as a person have the capacity to hold both.
That's actually a perfect example of what we mean by language as invocation. And you invoke the space when you yourself are aware of it, where you are holding that potential in for the group. So you may be in a group of people who are not connected to it, but you are. And you're naming it, your reference to it from that connection yourself invokes it for the whole. So that it's a powerful example of how, as a facilitator, as Thomas was saying, one can work with a group and start to create this field, this intersubjective field that has this energy and aliveness to it, which creates a different it creates a deeper connection for the work that we're doing, or the work that one is doing. So thank you.
And just also to emphasize the power of language here, because language is the main tool that we have to work this space. And the way you were describing it also with your heart relationship, if I want to connect it to what Pam said before about heart relationships, when we use the language, for example, to point out that I can have a heart relationship with you, talking with you right now, but at the same time, I can be also aware that there's a heart in the whole of us. That allows us to have an opening of our heart space that is not just on a one-to-one, and includes that, but in our heart awareness, but is opening up that there's the possibility of the heart of the whole we space that we are in. And this is not an intellectual transition, it's a transition of the heart, that I start with my heart to be aware, wait a moment, there is also a heart for the whole, and maybe even a heart of the whole in this. And by using language in this symbolic way, we can also allow this space to open up between us. So it's language that allows us to do this.
And it's language in that connection with that space within ourselves. It's just saying the words won't make the difference. So that which is important. But everyone has a heart. and everyone knows that everyone else has a heart. And in that it's a doorway, it's an opening. So thank you.
Kuyen, what's the next one? Hello, Kuyen.
Wow. Yes. I'm struck by the phrase you use, the heart for the whole. I was very, very struck by that phrase. And I'm also noticing that the heart as the whole, meaning whatever that I already have here, already as the whole itself.
Right.
And that that felt like both expansion but also familiar, very welcoming sense. It's both like the heart has welcomed me home, and the heart is bigger than what I think my heart is. So I also notice my own, because I tend to be very heady person too, is when I'm speaking symbolically with the word heart like this, there is a tendency for my mind to run away and like, this is, the language is too vague for the precision of the mind. And noticing that, and I really appreciate what Thomas you said, and not exactly any word, but the distinction you made gives my mind the comfort of clarity that feels really good. So that my heart, the heart is okay, vague and nice, but there's also this mental distinction and clarity that is very conducive.
That's great. That's really great, because that is what we're doing. Because we're making these distinctions that are distinctions, but the distinctions help your mind have something to reference to and then compare in your experience. And also, we don't tend to just start off with the word heart, because they're for two reasons. One, everybody has a sense of what that is already. We already know it. And so the open potential that we're speaking to can get shut down by our already present ideas about what this means. And it also can trigger for very thinky people. It's like, ugh, I don't want to deal with that. You know,
Yeah.
that's too mushy. You know, that's not real. The heart that we're speaking about, or what we're speaking about with this, is an intelligence. It is a sensing capacity and intelligence that is we would call it probably transrational. It is not categorical. It's not about you know, categories and labels and so forth, but it is an open intelligence that is something that exists between us and not just within oneself. And it is not the emotional heart. The emotional heart is often something that needs to be purified in order for this to become really active in one's being.
So, Kian, thank you very much for this clarification.
Thank you for the distinction of the emotional heart. That's very helpful.
Great, great, thank you. Okay, so Luke.
Yeah, could I just get some protocol from you, please, on how to be in the groups? I found it really difficult because one of the participants what I felt was she dominated the group. We had a big discussion in the group about it. I was quite angry with her. I probably stepped over the mark and was a bit too personal. But the sense was, and from the other members in the group, that she opened up, talking about all sorts of other people and what they were doing, what they weren't doing. And I just wanted to bring it back to what you were asking us to do. In my doing that, I was probably a bit too aggressive, but I just wondered what the protocol is in the group, because I'm also aware that my wife's on this call too, and she said she found the same thing in her group. We chatted about it, so just asking about protocol for how we actually do this work rather than get involved in our own stuff.
First, I don't know what kind of work you usually do, because I think there are different styles how to go about this situation. I also very much would invite you basically to your own expertise, how to deal with more difficult situations like this. The style that we use is to a big degree by pointing out and looking for understanding that something is transgressed in a situation, that when somebody starts to dominate the group, which basically means that he or she ignores the V space and puts himself just into the center and dominates the space in a way that either is not aware of the space as a whole or does not care as the space as a whole. So quite often what I try to do, and it very much depends on the situation, is that because this is a painful situation, that I try to create understanding of what it does. And quite often this is a helpful intervention, because at the same time, if there's understanding in the person, the person usually slows down at least, or at least questions oneself. It's not always the case, but very often it is the case. But at the same time, also for the whole group, it strengthens the understanding of what it means to care for the space and be aware of the space as a whole. And to be aware that this is exactly the critical point, because sometimes we can be so full of brilliant insights, and maybe they are really brilliant, but they are completely ignorant of the space that we are in. And because of that, we just push the others away, dominate the space, and squelch the space this way. And by investigating this together, a situation that can be a very painful, disturbing situation, sometimes, not always, turns completely around to be a very insightful situation where we learn exactly what is needed in order for this space to have air to breathe. So I don't have any general rules how to do it. I don't have a protocol because it very much depends on the situational circumstances. And we have a certain style that really is inviting people to understand and see what the space is about.
And also what you're saying is what someone's impact is on that space. And we are asking everyone who's participating to participate in the activity, in the group, in the way that we're asking. And that means being aware of other human beings, or else how can that be a we? But if you are in real trouble in a group, you can always call on us, because there is a way to reach out and ask us for help. But I would ask everyone here to be, this is the point. This is really the point of what we're doing, to be aware of your individual impact on a group. If you're facilitating and you're just coming from me and I've got the answers and I'm doing this, that, and the other thing and so forth, then you shut down the connectivity and the precious potential that lives between us. And that's really important, because then it's like I can just watch you on YouTube. I don't need to be here with you if that's the way you're going to be delivering what it is that you have to offer in this space.
And in fact, look, I'm very grateful that you brought this in the big circle here, because this way you turned difficulties that you were having into a collective learning experience for all of us. Because these are situations that we have to deal ongoingly and we facilitate. And because of the fragility, particularly of online gatherings, that are so much dependent on the coherence of the V space, a violation of this can be very difficult. And these are crucial moments. And of course, there are no recipes how to deal with it. It needs our capacities as facilitators to deal with difficulties like this and turn it around into a potential.
Aikido it.
To Aikido it. That's one way how we talk about this. But it allows us also right now to point out from your very experience right now how this is real, how kind of a transgression of the space or an ignorance of the space is, just to name it, destructive. It really it has the capacity to hinder the space to come to itself. So this V-space, more than on-site V-spaces, because of its fragility, is so dependent on our interdependence. And the first thing really to resort to, I think, is to call for our love for this, for our respect for each other, and our respect for this space. Of course, if that doesn't find resonance, there are different ways how to go about it. But first, I really would go with this, because that in itself strengthens the space, as I feel that you're bringing this up as a problem, strengthens the space here, because it strengthens our awareness that this is what we have to take care for.
Yeah, thank you very much. What I noticed for myself was the space is actually much more fragile than a regular space. It's much more sensitive to, like, if I'd have said that to somebody face to face, they would have possibly, it wouldn't have felt so strong in a way. And if they'd have said what they said in a normal space, there would have been more leeway to be with it. But I felt we both retreated, and it created a barrier. Much more. It was much more like it was more reactive than it would have normally been. And that's interesting for me, because I have to be careful of of how I can change the group dynamic very quickly by what I say.
Yeah, yeah. That's what, when Thomas speaks about the space as the we space as fragile. Online spaces, when they're used in the usual way, where one person is talking or people are just chipping in their bits and so forth, that's not the fragile. The fragile part is this subtle awareness of being together, and that can be, because it's so new to us to really work from this, because it's really a nascent, a newborn capacity for us to share, particularly online. It is so fragile, and that's why whatever sense one has of it, that it elicits care, that elicits longing, some sense of, oh, this is precious to me, this is valuable to me. Whatever degree that happens in oneself, that's what one needs to lean into in order to speak from and engage from, even with other people who are being destructive. Great. So thank you very much. Elizabeth.
Hi, thanks for what everybody said. I feel a little vulnerable, I suppose. I feel like some people have expressed some differences and some difficulties, as well as the gifts of their experience. And I'm struggling to be here. I think in any of having a sense of that we, it doesn't yet feel safe. And I'm wondering if that's the size of the group, or the fact that the breakout groups keep changing. So you can't go down the levels of working with a group, because you're seeing them for 10 or 20 minutes and then they're gone again. And that's why I'm interested in your words about fragmentation, and assuming that you don't mean there can't be difference within the group. Because I guess what I feel, the vulnerability for me, is that I feel I might be feeling differently about this course than other people are feeling. I feel frustrated at the moment, perhaps, with the fact that I thought I was coming to something that might be more based around how do we work with the online. And whilst that, I've got some really good nuggets out of that, a lot of it is about group process and how we show up for each other and how we hold that wee space. But it seems like that we could learn that in the flesh. So I'm sort of walking a bit of a line, I think, between, am I here to learn about online work, or am I here to learn about holding groups well, or being part of a group well? And I'm wondering if some of what I'm not yet, and it might come because I realize we've still got time, but I'm wondering whether some of my disappointment may be that it's not more focused on, so what happens, like Luke said, if something happens online, what's the difference of that when there's a clash within a group than it would be in, really teasing out what the difference is of working with that online and working with that offline, as it were. I'm wondering whether my disappointments just put me into a different place within myself, so that I'm not able to give myself and so fully at the moment to the we, and whether people would meet me in that place, because I guess that's what creates the we. If there's a sense of being connection, even in difference. That if I'm in a slightly different place, other people are really loving it, enjoying it, getting lots out of it. I'm not so much, but how can we connect in that place? That for me would be a we place. And maybe there'll be, sounds like there'll be more experiential stuff, and as you say, that's the place to learn it in and try it out and take the risks and get it wrong and repair it, and and move on. And it feels a little like I'm still maybe in my head, or I suppose I'm expressing what I would like, and then and my disappointment of what's not happened so far, either for me or within the course. And I want to support myself in being here to make a good choice about whether to continue and try to give myself to what's going on in the group, even though it wasn't quite what I expected, or whether to support myself by stepping out because it's not quite meeting the need at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm being really honest, and I'm feeling vulnerable because there's a number of people here in this 85 people that I know. So I'm not sure if that makes it safer or harder to say this, but I'm a verbal processor. So I think it needed to come out rather than stay in.
Sure. I think you mentioned yourself right now some of the particularities of doing this online versus being on site. And it mostly comes down to the fragility of this space. The fragility of this space out of different reasons. One, because this is a new space where we have to learn also in a new way how to hold gatherings, because we are not used to do this. And also because it's much easier in this space to kind of inwardly and outwardly just turn away. It's to check out, to be just in one's own private space. So one of the main difference in the online space is that the capacity to hold coherence is much more needed than in an on-site meeting because of the particularities of this. That's one of the reasons why we focus on how to develop and how to hold a coherence, and also how to deal with the capacity to not fracture. But what you were pointing to, I think, is in fact one of the most interesting points of any kind of V-space. But it's again even more so in an online setting, is how to hold the coherence with different perspectives. Because there is this friction point that you were talking, that usually, and we had it in the conversations before, very easily turns into a conflict point. There's my perception of the situation, there's your perception of the situation, and this point to the degree that we are able to be aware and to cherish the space that we are in, can be a very interesting point where I'm just interested in what you're saying, and you're really interested in what I'm saying, and we don't necessarily have to agree on it at all, but the interest is able to hold the tension between us. Because to the degree that we're able to hold the tension, this can be the most creative point in the whole conversation, because there's something where maybe a third perspective is opening up. That's beyond my perspective and beyond your perspective, and that particular comes out because we hold different perspectives, but only if we don't fracture, only if we stay in. So part of the necessities of facilitation is to allow these different perspectives to be there, and these tensions points to be there, and find ways in this very fragile situation of meeting online to hold it as a whole. And the facilitation capacities that we try to talk to and try to encourage is, how can we hold the multiplicity of perspectives and experiences and make it a creative experience?
And also it depends on the work that you're doing. We're talking about sculpting atmospheres. It's like if you're holding your weekly work meeting where everyone checks in and says what they're doing, you know, and how they're working on their projects. Maybe you don't need this. But if you're looking to work with people and aid them in their process or their transformation, that you're trying to work together at a deeper way that is more creative, then what happens in this space becomes very, one has to bring a different level of awareness to that in order to create the connectivity that allows for co-creativity and deep connection to happen. So that's the one has to hold this space and care for this space, in even if one doesn't know fully what it is, because it isn't something that is going to be automatically understood by the rational mind and by the ways that we make sense usually. It's made sense of by sensing into and not knowing. So in some ways, the place that you're in may be a wonderful place from which to openly find out through one's experience of not knowing and wanting to find out, and wanting to allow something between us that you don't quite know to flourish, and to see what happens as we reach to engage with this, with something that is more subtle than our thoughts and feelings. But this program is for nurturing these kinds of possibilities and potentials in an online space. And we start with the consciousness, because being aware of how this potential can open up and what its nature is important before we design a space or design a workshop or whatever, in order to meet the goals that we have for creating connection and co-creating with each other.
I think just my sense is that I've done lots of group process work and lots of different, various places of exploring how to be in a group and how to work with a group. And what the difference would be for me would be in learning more, or having more of a focus on what's the difference then online, as opposed to being able to sit with my own uncertainties and seeing how it unfolds. Or I'm not sure that quite comes back at what you were saying, but I think for me it's still probably a question of how much of a focus is there in this on work, in the differences of working online. I was just playing this morning with filtering out and hearing it just through the lens of group work, a training in group consciousness and group process. And I thought, oh yeah, that's really, I could feel my spirit lift at that point, because I was letting go of the frustration of not feeling like I was having enough guidance or input on the online side of things. Mm-hmm. But I guess now I've verbalized it, I'm not sure again. So I've got flopped back again. And that's okay. I'm okay about being in uncertain and unknown places and seeing, where my choice and energy takes me.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carmen. Ooh,
thank you.
For a break. But go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My observation, and it is a question for you, if you can give me some feedback about this, because what I found in our breakout, and I found myself as a facilitator also in person and online in this situation, is about fragmentation, when we are experiencing the we space very clearly. It is very clear for everyone in the room. Mm-hmm. And someone with a good intention, and maybe even without judgment, just point out or name someone's quality or someone's something. Can be something in the background, can be any specific thing about someone with the name and this quality or this object. And then what I found in this breakout and in my experience, that somehow this creates a very subtle fragmentation. Mm-hmm. And I see that it is difficult for me when I'm the person who does this. I mean, who highlights someone's quality with the best intention, this fragmentation comes in. So I realized that it's all about coming back to holding the we space and to feel it again. But I would love just if you can give some more thoughts about it, because is what you say, it is so sensitive, the we space. It is so, and I feel that we are so sensitive in that we space. And as soon as we feel pointed out or somehow out of the whole, it's just so painful. So yeah, we can come back, how can, as a facilitators. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, first, I would like to invite you to just also use your own experience and your own skill, because I'm sure in this big group that we have here, there are a lot of skills how to deal with these space processes, and what we try to highlight is the specifics, how this unfolds maybe in a slightly different way in an online context, and how the fragility is higher, how the necessity to hold it with our intention and attention is more important than in online spaces, and at the same time how there is a different potential out of the very same reasons. So we have different ways, particular ways, a particular style how to go about this, but I would invite you mostly to just also rely on your own experience and your own expertise, how to hold the space. What we try to work out here is that the we space, the interbeing space, is something that is fundamental to work with in this fragile situation of an online meeting that we try to work with here.
There's our timer. But I'll pick up from where Thomas was. I think that the sensitivity of the space is something that one can bring the group's attention to in situations like that. And if you are all in, we are all in this together to learn about how this sensitivity works differently in an online space, then we can name to each other, like, oh, isn't that interesting? Did you notice that there's something different that happened in the space as a result of that? To keep bringing our awareness back to that we are working this as a whole. So it's that wonderful gesture to point to something in someone's background, well-meaning as it is. It's like, wow, did you notice that there was all of a sudden we were all focused there and not focused here? And using as one of your guidelines for your groups or whatever that we want to hold, pay attention to what's happening between us rather than what is anyone's individual story or anyone's individual context. And that can create a foundation for a shared agreement to be able to point out things like that and their effect on the whole. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. It's now past time for our break. So we'll come back at 10 minutes after the hour or at 20 minutes to the hour if you're coming from India. And yeah, we'll see you again soon. And please, again, try to take a full break from digitalism and be go outside, be in nature, do something that puts you in touch with the vitality of the organic life in the world. So thank you very much.
And see you in half an hour. Welcome back, everyone. Again, would like to invite us to just arrive here in this group. And as we keep saying, the acknowledgement of this online V-space is the foundation of holding this V-space. And as most of you have in your own way as practitioners, psychotherapists, counselors, coaches, your own way to hold spaces, we just want to point out how the specifics of an online V-space is that it's so much dependent just on our attention and our intention to co-create this space. Part of what we try to convey with this course is just also a deep experience that online V-spaces can be very real. To appreciate the realness and together explore the realness of this. Because so many people, as many of us are not used to these online spaces yet, are skeptical about the reality, the realness factor of the capacity to meet here. And this realness is what makes the difference to accept and acknowledge the potential of doing this.
Mm. And so yesterday we were working to open this the experience of that connection with you. And today we're trying to focus more on this interbeing, this intersubjective, the space between, and how we can nurture that. And the first place that we nurture it from is through our own awareness and care for that space and the potential of that space itself. Because that will be the driver of the connectivity that you create in your own work. So we're developing and working to build the muscle of sensing and shifting our perspective from simply from an I perspective, a me I perspective, to a focus on the space between, and what is therefore what arises in the in-between space, because it's that becomes more palpable in an online context, because we are not physically together. We are not taking our cues from each other's body movements and so forth. What becomes more palpable and more available to us is the fact that we are present, and that we are sharing presence at a subtle level. And the connectivity and power of group work or shared or dyad work in in this space comes from our capacity as facilitators to hold this deeper connectivity of presence. And we invite, we put down all the hands because they've been there for a while, but we invite you to engage with us about questions, and we hope to do another small group before the end of this session also. So if you have a question, please ask. Yeah. Okay, Rosalie.
I don't really have a question, but more of a reflection.
Mm.
And one of the things that became apparent to me in our group was the more that I could rest back and not try to get anything or make anything happen, that I could sense people more fully.
Mm.
And so there's something that you were saying about, words as invocation. There's also the silence around the words. And my experience was and is that the more that I can rest in silence, more that the others were we were resting in silence. It was almost like each person's contribution became more almost like enunciated, because you could really hear it because there was so much silence around it,
Mm.
And then when we were talking earlier and different people were contributing, I decided to look up the word coherence. And there was something about, this sense of a unified whole, and how all these different emergencies are happening, people experiences emerging within this whole. And my sense of that in the way that you're offering this workshop is that the learning is actually coming out through these inquiries. So, I can't remember the guy, what Luke bought and what the other lady bought. That is part of the coherence. That is part of the group intelligence coming forward and being woven into what's being offered. That's how I'm understanding it. And finally, just one last thing, that what I also noticed is when I was in that, when we were in our small group and we were in that sort of space of listening, it was also possible to hear the dynamics and, to feel the uncertainty, like this is like someone said yesterday, wow, I was really scared. Like this was scary. Like sometimes my experience is that people are coming in and perhaps speaking a lot because they don't know what to do. This is new, so how to hold it with compassion and understanding is that, and not as a wishy-washy thing, but as a reality. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe to add to what you said, and what you said implicitly, with the courage not to know. Because the way I hear you, and it seems to be important also how we try to invite to hold this space. And what you're pointing to with the silence is when we come online together, also particularly in the small groups, and particularly in an online setting where we just don't know each other. There is the temptation, as you're saying, to just go on with something that's basically already made in myself and put it on you, versus just listening to the space itself. That something is emerging between us, which does not mean that we have to be silent all the time, but to give the silence a space in the conversation. That something can emerge out of the space of not knowing. because there's a different aliveness, or let's put the aliveness only is really aliveness. If it comes out of the space between us, that is only present right now. So what you're pointing to is particular, if you want to facilitate this with other people, a quality that allows us to connect to the here-ness of our encounter. And it means to have the courage to not know. Which doesn't mean that I don't know. There are a lot of things, of course, that we know, and I don't want to deny that, but have the space also where I don't know. I'm seeing you, Rosalie, here the first time. I see your face. Something is emerging between us in this conversation that comes out of the meeting point between us. And this meeting point, because it's new to both of us and all of us, is a new one. So if I come with all my ideas of what it is, I miss the newness factor. And the most beautiful emergence comes when this newness factor is allowed to be part of this. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly when aliveness happens, always. And so I very much appreciate your contribution to that, because I think it really makes a huge difference.
Mm. Yeah, just and coming back, and I could really feel you then.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a different way. I'm really interested in that. I really felt like you were looking through the screen.
Yeah.
That really interests me. You know, how is that happening?
Mm.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you said that I feel is really important is, you know, the thing about courage, because to rest in that not knowing, I think it's a Zen thing, not knowing is the greatest intimacy.
Mm.
To really rest in that, one has to be able to tolerate or have the capacity to be with turbulence, interpersonal turbulence, fear, self-consciousness, nervousness. And if we don't have that kind of ground and stability, then we're just going to act from our usual way of negotiating social or interpersonal dynamics. Yeah.
And I think that's also why the silence is so important. I mean, there are many different kinds of silence, but the silence that connects us, there is a way in which, because it is beyond language and it is not something separate. I don't have my silence and you have your silence in the space. We are silent together. And in that silence together, we create coherence in the field. And having that as a starting place, because every group starts with silence. It may be only a moment, but to even extend that time as a way of creating coherence in a group is a very powerful way to begin. In some contexts, it's not appropriate, but in most contexts, some moment of silence, some moment of gathering can allow us to become present to each other and actually be here together, in some ways, in our not knowing what's next.
I love that. Thank you.
And also, just to repeat, it is not our intention that our facilitation style is the facilitation style that everyone should use, because there's so much knowledge in this group here, and we just would encourage you to go with your own experience and your own expertise, how to facilitate groups. The way we do what we do is to allow that this happens, what you just pointed out, that there's a real experience that we can see each other online. Because that's the reason why we call this online aliveness. Because if we succeed to really facilitate this experience that online can be alive, that this alive factor can be conscious, then you with your own experience can work in your own way with this aliveness. But what you try to really provide experiences and understandings that this is a possibility on screen, and that there are ways how it works slightly different because of a different situation in these online situations. But the main factor is that there's this aliveness factor to work with that allows to make Zoom meetings of a very different quality.
And that means being present, fully being present here, and being present and seeking and having one's sensing out to experience the presence of the whole.
Mm,
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rosalie.
thank you.
Di?
Hi, yeah, a slightly different question. We've talked a lot about the presence, the we on screen, but for me, very often, there's a sense of a we beyond the screen. And so for a concrete example, one of my roles in life is as a primary care doctor. So we have maybe meetings of 12 of the 14 doctors, so 2 are missing, but also, so there's a we of the 2 who aren't there, and there's a sense of their presence in some way, but also there's another 20 people working with us, nurses and receptionists, and then there's 10,000 patients, and then there's the people of Scotland and of the world. So I just wonder what your reflections are about the kind of group we of the people who are there and the people who are quite closely involved, but for some reason are missing that day, and then the bigger we that is really as much our focus as, in some ways, as the people who are in the room.
Well, I think that invoking that is important. Invoking the larger circles that you're in and working with is very important to tapping the intelligence of the center group that's online and present at the moment, but tapping that intelligence in the service of the whole concentric circles that you're speaking about. Because you're saying, here's the doctors who are present, here's the staff and people who work with, they form a next level of circle who aren't present. And then there's all the patients, there's the communities that the patients are in, there's an entire world that the earth kind of shapes around that in a sense.
Yeah.
But it's in some ways it can be a lovely part of beginning your work or your meeting to call that in. Oops, there's feedback. We just muted you, Di, so you'll have to unmute yourself. So that because actually at a deeper level, this we is not really confined to the people who are present online. It is, and you can even see here when you look at our different spaces, the places that we're coming from, that we are representing different places on this planet, and the we anchor the we as human beings anchor this becoming conscious we, but it's not only us. We are here as intelligent focus points for a larger whole. And so in the work that you're doing to call in everyone's recognition that we are supported by staff and nurses that form a larger circle than just us here, and patients who are in our communities that we're also serving, that can heighten, particularly when meeting at this level of depth, can heighten the intelligence from which you make decisions in that center circle.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Karen?
It's amazing how the last two ladies speaking kind of led up to something that happened for me before the break. I'm so fascinated that the exercise we did was encouraging us to now explore I, you and you, and the wholeness. And the moment we called in that wholeness and what that's about, that the feedback afterwards was actually some fragmentation that showed up. You know, we called in the whole and it brought up the pieces. And, you know, I think about process-oriented psychology and what you talk about, Elizabeth, with the field, that every voice is part of it. And those voices that are fragmented are an important part of it too. It made me realize how important intention is and the power of it, that if you call wholeness, it brings everything out. If you come back to what you said about using the heart and setting intention to include, you know, that it holds it all. And for me, it's so much simpler if I have intention. If I begin with intention of, I call the whole we, or the call everybody, we call the wholeness and the coherence, I feel like there's something invisible that then helps me to hold the space because I said that. And then the other thing, which is partly my question, is that in our group, there was, you know, 5 of us kind of held the question or had a good discussion. And there was one person who was quiet through most of it. And then instead of it becoming a dominating thing, some brilliant person in the group actually invited the quiet person if they wanted to speak, welcomed them into the space. It was so beautiful. And then 2 things happened. Because she'd been quiet, she'd reflected back how it was for her. And suddenly I was envious that I hadn't been quiet. There was such a power there. But realizing the power of words, you know, that words could bring us all together. And the lack of words can also bring, like, I was worried that we were dominating her and she wasn't getting to speak. And then what words, the moment somebody said the word coronavirus, it brought us all together because we were all humans on the planet together. And I came away from that exercise feeling a bit pressured because I really have to watch my words or choose the words. And I feel like I need a vocab set. And I don't know if that's maybe what we're learning here is, you know, you're talking about adding words, but like, I feel like I need more words, or do I have enough words? And what words do I use? And what happens when, you know, this is an easier group to work with because we're all open to consciousness or the divine, or what happens when it is people who are not, you know, do I speak human, uncertainty, coronavirus, because they're words we can all relate to no matter our path. So I walked away with a bit of the pressure of, I've really got to be aware of my words. What am I choosing? Where can I find more? You know, I'd like to tease you and say, could you give us a list, you know, that I can bring in? Don't worry, I don't expect that. But I walked away with, like, my words are important about bringing together or not. Yeah, and I didn't know if you had a comment about that. Thank you.
In fact, we are grateful that you bring this up because this is something we wanted to talk about. And we are talking about sculpturing atmospheres. What is the main tool we sculpture with? It's words. Particular, even more so when we are in an online setting where we are basically sound and image. And just to be very aware how words literally are magic. Words in itself are the power of magic. And what I mean with that is, as you did it just now, you used the word coronavirus. I'm sure something opened up in the whole space of the 80 people of us. So you manifested something in the consciousness space. And when I just use the word tree, something is manifesting in the consciousness space. And when, as you did, I talk about wholeness, something is opening up. And just to be aware, the power of language. That as we are talking and as we're using language to create these cultural spaces between us, is the words that we are setting that are creating this consciousness space. And to be just very aware what language does. Language can open up, a language can nail down, language can resonate. Language can deaden something. Language can enliven something. And it is the consciousness where we come from and the way we use language, how we allow a certain dialogical space to open up. And just to be very aware that it is the use of language that creates everything that we're doing here right now. And it does it in a very powerful way. And when we facilitate groups, just to be very aware, when we talk about the duality between fragmentation and coherence, or the polarity to be more precise. And it's also interesting when I call it polarity, I already create a difference than what I said before, because if I call it polarity, I allow both to be part of it, and they are not necessarily contradicting each other. They hold the wholeness. So just calling it polarity changes the way how we perceive it. So that's a point in case what I wanted to say, and to be aware that our care with language, just to care what I'm setting here in this space, really creates the space that we are cultivating together.
Because our care for language is our care for the space. Because we are not physically together. Because we are working in this medium, have a visual, and we have our language, and therefore what we are creating in consciousness, which is sensible, which we can feel, is through that language. That's why what we mean by language is invocation. Our language invokes the space and invites participants, other human beings, into this space together. But it's our care in how we express ourselves and how we are articulating our experience, because that's what we're doing, is what allows the space to flourish or not. And actually, maybe that's a good place to move from in order to have a group session, because it would be wonderful to continue talking about this, about how language creates the space between us. So what we'd like to do is to break you into groups of about 4. And then for about 10 minutes, speak together about how the language that you're using and the way that you're using it creates the space between you, or changes the space between you.
So we will open up the breakout rooms. You will have something like 10 minutes, and we will let you know halfway through 5 minutes that it is halfway through.
And be mindful of each other, space for each other, to be really with each other, and with this question: how does language create the space between us?
And as you do this and investigate this, be aware that you're doing what you're talking about. You're creating a space between you. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back. Does anyone want to share their experience in the group? And not simply your experience, but let's continue with this question. How does language create the space? What did you discover?
And let's not only continue with the question, let's also continue with the practice to sculpture the space through the language we use.
Mm. And to do that, rather than raising your hand, you can just open your mic and speak. There may be a little overlapping, but we invite you to join the conversation with us. How does language create the space?
I would like to say something about that. I feel I'm quite clumsy with language myself. And something that happened during our very short and delightful group session was that something was uncomfortable and then it was named, and that actually resonated in other person who also named that resonance. And just by naming our vulnerability and our discomfort, we created, to me, what felt like a really powerful space. So I am still struggling with finding words, and I am very aware of how careful we should be as facilitators with the words we choose. But just having that aliveness and that spontaneity of just naming, I'm uncomfortable with my vocabulary, may resonate with somebody else, and that already makes a hard connection that I think is very powerful.
Thank you. And also in this context, those of us who are native English speakers need to have a lot of compassion for the courage and of our compatriots here who are not speaking their native tongue. So just to put that in the mix also, and that's important to think about anytime one is facilitating. It is also one of the reasons why we try to speak more slowly, so that if the intention behind the language comes through more clearly, and also so that it doesn't come so quickly that it just jangles up your mind.
And I think as well as speed, there's something about tone and inflection that makes a huge difference. Even if the words are not perfect, tone and inflection can help to create the space.
Very much so.
And the language of gesture. I think put her hand on her heart, and the language of gesture seemed to be the perfect thing at that time. So a different kind of language, and one that's very, very powerful. I found it a beautiful way to feel connected.
Can I just say something? What hasn't been addressed yet is the eye contact. You know, that I feel for you both, for instance, I feel being directly looked at when you are talking, but sometimes when you address other participants, it seems that the eye contact is a bit off center, or, you know. And I think that is when I meet people in person, I feel, or in gatherings, I feel that the eye contact is very important for me to how I feel included or not feel included, you know, that, or just, you know, gauging or just getting a sense of who that person is. And it may just be a technical thing, you know, that I'm not sure yet how to deal with. I don't know, for instance, if you see me, if I look at you right away, or if I have to look up here.
We do see you.
But in terms of, you know what I'm saying, in terms of eye level, or eye axis. it irritated me that my Siri went off. So sorry about that.
That's fine. I mean, you're right. And this is one of the difficulties in online meetings that we talked about yesterday, that when you look, as I look into your eyes right now, I don't look into the camera, so it doesn't look like I'm looking into your eyes. And
that you are not looking into the camera now.
No, I'm not looking into the camera. I'm looking into your eyes on my screen.
On the screen, okay.
But from your point of view, it looks like I'm not looking into your eyes. Now I'm looking into your eyes because I'm looking into the camera, I guess. And as someone mentioned today, it can be helpful to sometimes look just into the camera to make this gesture. What we find is important is to not make it too much of a technical question.
Yeah.
But just to look with your heart. Because when you said that you feel when Elizabeth and I are talking that we are looking at you, mostly we're not looking into the camera. Mostly we're looking on the screen where we see your face.
Okay.
And my guess is it's the being with you and being with each other that also allows the experience of being seen. And of course, sometimes to use this also technical trick to look into the camera and be aware that this is more a direct glance on the visuals is helpful. But there is the danger to be distracted by the technical questions, because looking at you is not a technical question, and we don't want to make a technical question out of it.
Yeah, that was not also not what I meant. It is really, you get a lot of information just by the way people react to what you're saying through eye contact. You know, that's right. Would you agree?
Yes. Yes, and we're in some ways in this context because our cameras are placed in different places and our faces on the screen are in different angles to that camera, that technical part, that's why practicing this presence and sensing is so important, because then I'm looking more with my being. I'm holding you in the embrace of my being. I'm not trying to make eye contact with you through the screen or in this through the camera. I'm embracing you from a different place, and that is something that we learn to develop in this context, because the actual eye contact is often difficult to manage, particularly in a group with everyone's camera being in a different place.
Exactly, and with all these small on the screen. That's what I'm trying to digest, you know, because now I feel I'm conversing with you, you know, but sometimes I feel when you talk to other people, then I don't feel, I mean, I don't know if that's right, then I didn't feel addressed, or that I could clearly see that you were talking to other people. And so I know what you're saying with being embraced, but am I part of it or not? That really depends on, am I being looked at or not?
Yeah.
In a way.
Yes. And just because of this online situation and being looked at does not necessarily mean looked at the camera. Something that we have to learn new here,
right?
That our eyes don't meet, and we still are looking into our eyes.
So you are looking at the picture on the screen, in the eyes, and not in the camera, right?
Exactly. Okay. As you are, and this is something to be learned. Because usually, if I look somewhere else, it means I'm looking somewhere else. But the fact is, I'm not looking somewhere else. Inwardly, I'm very much looking
Mm-hmm.
But on your side, it doesn't. And this is a new cultural situation that we have to get adjusted to, because it's different than meeting in person.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, it's good to talk about it, also to get liberated from the necessity to be looked into your eyes, because it's not possible. The moment I look into your eyes, I'm not. The moment I look into your camera, in fact, I'm looking into the camera, I'm looking not in the eyes. There's no real way that the eyes can meet on camera right now. The only way we can meet is with our inner eye. But this is possible. And to experience, as you are saying, that this is possible, sets a new anchor, because then we say, okay, here it works maybe in a different way, and to appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So just to use the language of the thinking environment, I was in a seminar once with Nancy Klein, and she said, learn to manage your face so that you don't interrupt other people's thinking. But I'm thinking that in this environment, to encourage people to use that language, one needs to become more expressive, not less expressive.
Yeah. Right, right. Not manage your neutrality. Yeah. Yeah. But and that expression comes comes through your language, comes through your face. You're an instrument for conveying and invoking what it is that you're inviting people to. And while that is true when one is doing, training in front of someone or facilitating or whatever, here it's because it's so much more subtle. It requires much more depth to convey the same thing. And yeah, I think we just heard the bells on our church, which says that it's noon. But thank you for this last round and this last weaving together in dialogue, which was very worked very well.
And we would like to come to a closure today. And also we would like to just share with you, we give this course for free, and we are very happy to do this as a gift. It's part also as what we understand as a gift economy. If you feel inclined to help our work with your donation, we are very happy. There's no pressure. It's all good. It is meant as a gift, so take it as a gift. But if you feel inclined to give a donation to support what we're doing, it will help us very much to do this work.
Yeah. And again, like yesterday, we'll open the breakout rooms from your last little group, since it was so short, and allow you to go back there if you would like to speak again with the people that you were with, or if you want to hang out here in the main room, or if you need to go, please have a wonderful day.
So if you need to go, have a wonderful day. If you want to hang out here in the main room, please take the room. It's open. If you want to go back into your breakout room and look if someone is there, do that, and you also can go back and forth. Thank you very much.
See you tomorrow.
Tot ziens.